Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us for another exciting schools webinar here at TPN. Today we are focusing on school fees. 25% of school fees are not paid. So today we are focusing on how we can assist in respect of credit checks and collections to ensure you get the most out of TPN's system and in collecting unpaid school fees. My name is Ashley Lorraine, legal counsel here at TPN. With me in studio here today is Chanel Coutier, who will be explaining the importance and providing a step-by-step guide around performing credit checks, and thereafter we will be discussing collections and how best to collect unpaid school fees using TPN's system. And you may not see her, but you will definitely hear her during our Q&A. Facilitating our webinar is Nikki Kazergs. We are realizing that a lot of you may be load shedding, so if for whatever reason you aren't able to watch this video now, you're welcome to go have a look on our YouTube page. All our videos are there, and you can definitely watch it then. Chanel?
Morning, Ashley. Good morning to all of our schools joining today. We look forward to hosting the session to you. Just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Remember to engage with us today. You need to be signed in on YouTube in order to access the chat section. And if Ashley and myself are looking a little bit blurry, please do click on the cog on the bottom right corner of the screen and select it to a minimum of 720p as your resolution. After the session, we will also be hosting a short 15-minute Q&A session, and during that time, we will be making available the feedback link. Please do look out for that because we really do look forward to hearing back from you. Right, Ashley, I think let's get right into it.
Yes, let's jump in.
So in order for you to access your TPN profile, you need to log on to the TPN website, www.tpn.co.za. Where you'll select the TPN Credit Bureau option, and that will then bring you to this blue landing page, Do You Know Your Applicant? From here, in the top right corner, you'll click on Login, and this is then the page where you will have to enter your username and password, which you would have received via email, and you'll click on Login. Once you've logged in, it will then take you through to the dashboard section. So just to explain to you what you'll be seeing here, the dashboard is going to give you the overview of what your school profile looks like. If you are submitting your parent payment behavior, either via an electronic export or loading the parent data manually, that will then create a data chart for you on your dashboard, whereby you can see out of the amount of parents that you've recorded onto the system, what are the monthly payment behaviors and the collections based on how your parents have paid or might not have paid. When you mouse over on the data chart on the live system, it will show you month by month how many parents paid in full and on time, how many made partial payments, or how many made no payment at all. What's important to note here when loading your parent payment behavior is that for the current month you submit that data, TPN will be sending a free SMS notification to the parent to inform them of how their credit profile has been updated based on either how they paid or might not have paid.
And Chanel, just that the receipts of that SMS will obviously, so it'll inform them how they paid, if they paid on time, or if they paid late, and hopefully they will then take cognizance of that SMS and improve their payment profile as they go when they receive that SMS.
Yes, it really does encourage them to change their payment behavior to a more positive aspect. Below the data chart, you will then also receive a to-do list. And the to-do list sets as a nice reminder for what still needs to happen on your overall profile. The important part to look out for here is your partially paid accounts as well as your unpaid accounts. What TPN does is we group these two amounts together and we place them under important tasks, whereby we actually give you a reflection of which of your parents are actually needing to receive a letter of demand because they've got outstanding school fees. This is a section that we will be delving into a little bit later throughout the session. For now, we're going to go back to the top and have a look at the credit vetting process of your parent applications. You'll click on credit checks and then you'll select this first option, perform a new consumer credit check, which can be used for an individual that's got either an ID number or a passport number. When you click on that, it will take you through to step 1, enter the consumer details. Select your inquiry type. The inquiry reason is not the type of report that you will be doing, but rather the reason for you conducting that credit check. For your parent applications, you may select rental/setting limit for goods or services because the school will be delivering a service to that parent. It is important to note that if you might want to perform a credit check in respect of new staff members that you want to employ at the school, on this drop-down, you do also have the ability to go and select the reason being employment. So if someone might be applying for a position working with cash or finances, you'll see that you have the option to select that option, cash and finances. And if you purely want to verify the qualification or employment verification, you can then select that last option there. For today, however, we are going to leave it on rental/setting limit for goods or services, as we will be looking and focusing on the parent applications. Below your inquiry reason, we also have your reference field. Although it's not a mandatory field, you do have the ability to make use of this field if you would like to associate something very specific with that parent that you are going to conduct the inquiry on. So for example, if you are going to use it for exemption purposes, you might want to include the full exemption or partial exemption as an example. Enter the inquiry details. This is then where you will be entering the information of the parent that you've received. So you'll enter their ID number, the first name, surname, their current address, as well as their contact number. If, however, you've received an application that is someone who's got a passport, you'll see that there's a link which you can click on to change it to a passport number search, and this will then also prompt you to enter that individual's date of birth as well as the nationality. What I do want to highlight out on this step 1 is the first name and surname. It's important for you to enter this information directly off of that parent's ID document that they've supplied you with. The reason around that is on step 2, you will have the ability of verifying the identity of that parent. So a lot of times we like to give ourselves nicknames or abbreviated names, and if they have written on their form that their name is Freddie, but they've been registered as Frederick at the Department of Home Affairs, that will then give you an ID verification warning stating that the information you've entered does not match with the information that we received back from the Department of Home Affairs. When we click on Next, Step 2, Confirm Consent. At the top, you will see that there is something called your Credits score. The score version for schools that will be available is the Basic Credits and the Silver Credits. And just to explain what this is, your Basic Credit score will generate a score based on what the probability is of that parent defaulting in future. For schools that do receive salary information from their parents, you will then have the ability to also generate an affordability score. That score is, however, based on what the net monthly income is versus the school fee installment that the parent is applying for. We do understand that a lot of schools do not obtain this information, so for that purpose, if you don't have that information, you can simply select Basic Credits and move on to the next section, your consumer verification. You'll notice that the ID verification has been ticked automatically, and the reason around that is, as I've mentioned earlier, it's important for you to verify that the person that is applying at the school is indeed who they say they are. So the ID verification will run a status check against the Department of Home Affairs, and it will also return back with a photo of what they should look like. We've taken it one step further by also allowing the client to verify the biometrics. If you do select this option, it means that the parent that's applying will receive an SMS with the link that they need to click on. That link will then prompt them to take a selfie photo of their face, so moving their face upwards, downwards, from left to right, and the system then basically matches up whether or not the real lifetime photo does match up with the photo that's returned back from the Department of Home Affairs. You'll also have the ability to verify the address information. So let's say, for example, they've applied, but one of their documents being the proof of address is outstanding. You can then select this option, or if you would just like to verify the information that they have supplied you with, you can verify it by selecting this option. Then right at the bottom, we have the compliance, the NCA compliance declaration, which you have to confirm you have received written consent from that applicant prior to running the credit check. Ashley, please can you explain to us why it is important for schools and for anyone running a credit check to obtain consent before actually running that credit check?
Absolutely, Chanel. So it is imperative that the school receives the relevant consent from the parent before performing the credit check, so that if the parent does request their credit report at a later stage, they will see what we call a footprint confirming that the school has performed a credit check. And if for whatever reason they might not remember giving the necessary consent, or they don't recall this, TPN is then entitled as a credit bureau to ask the school for the relevant consent, in which case the school will send back a copy of the application showing the relevant consent clause, and therefore confirming that the school did in fact have the necessary consent to perform these credit checks.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So it is important, if you don't currently have consent clauses included into your application forms, please do reach out to us. We will be happy to supply you with the consent clause that you can incorporate into your own application forms. Now we're going to click on Next, and that will then take you through to the report selection, which is another very important part of your credit check process. So on today's screen, we can see that the Smart Check inquiry has automatically been ticked. And the reason for that is because the Smart Check inquiry is the most comprehensive credit report. It's a combined report that provides you with all of the information that we as TPN collect, so school fee data, rental data, as well as levy data. And it also hosts the information, the SACRA data that is profiled on the Transunion database. And the SACRA data that we refer to are different types of credit accounts, such as clothing accounts, credit cards, vehicle finances, and whether or not they are actually paying those accounts on a monthly basis. The Smart Check inquiry is based on reciprocity of data, which means you as the client need to feed data into the system in order to get data back out of the system. The data that is needed for access to Smart Check is your parent payment behavior. If you are not currently submitting parent payment behavior, or you are unsure on how to do so, please do reach out to our data department by sending them an email at data@tpn.co.za, or you're also more than welcome to give them a call so that they may assist you with this process. On step 3, so at the bottom, if you have received the banking information of your parent applications, you will also have the ability to select bank account verification, whereby you can confirm the information that they've supplied you with does verify. If you select this option and then you click on Perform Credit Check, that will then provide you with an additional step whereby you're going to enter that parent's banking information. Once you've completed it, you'll then click on Finish. That will then take you through to the credit check result, whereby you can see the consumer's information that's returned. And then if we go down just a little bit more, we can now see the ID verification that's also returned with that very important photo of what they should look like. On your ID verification, it will confirm the marital status, the gender, is that person registered with the Home Affairs National Identification System, do they form part of the National Populations Register, and if you have selected that selfie option, the biometrics, once the parent has confirmed or successfully conducted that selfie check, you will then see that there's a green tick. And if there's no red flags appearing on the ID verification, that parent then obviously receives an overall pass. If, however, you do see anything different to the screen that we are looking at today, so if there's a red flag saying ID blocked, or ID does not match, or information does not match, please do reach out to our help desk department, as they will then be able to investigate and assist you with why that result has returned as it has. Below your ID verification, we then have the Know Your Client verification, which is that portion where we have selected to verify the address information. So what your KYC does is it matches the person's information that they've supplied you with versus the address information versus the contact number, and in this case we can see everything has matched. From the report, you will also be able to download a KYC certificate, which you can then keep for your FICA purposes and just hold it on file for future reference. When we go down a little bit more, we then get to the Smart Check scorecard, and this is very important. So with the Smart Check scorecard, we can obviously see that it highlights out the risk areas that might be associated with that parent's credit profile. In this instance, we can see the basic credits has returned as a C for average, and this score ranges from A to F. A is the highest for excellent, B is good, C is average, there's no D, E is below average, and then F is poor, your lowest score. The score is calculated based on what data is available on our credit bureau as well as that of Transunion, based on the good standing percentages, which we can see in these two pie charts, which is taken from the parents' payment behavior for accounts that they've got on our credit bureau as well as that of Transunion. Although it's nice to have the Smart Check giving you the summary of where the risks are that might be associated, it's always best to go into further detail and actually see what these types of accounts are for and what the specific payment behaviors are. To access that information, you need to go back to the top, where you'll find the different tabs within your Smart Check inquiry. The first tab that we see there is your TPN tab. When we click on that, it will provide you with all of the basic consumer information that we've got stored on our bureau. And as we continue to scroll down, we can then actually start seeing any current or previous account information that's been recorded. In this instance, we can see that this parent had a rental account. We can confirm what the rental amount was, which is also important in terms of affordability. And you can then see that in this instance, the parent has paid on time and in full for all of those months that's been recorded. So anything in green ultimately means that payment has been received in full and on time. That is the type of information that you look forward to seeing. We also see here that there is school fee information that's been recorded. If we have a look at this payment behavior, we can see that there are quite a few different types of color-coded payment flags that's been recorded. The yellow PL will stand for paid late, so meaning the parent did make payments in full, but they paid it after the due date. We also see that some months he made payment in full and on time, and then we can see that this parent had a behavior of making payments partially every month. This is a very interesting case because it's actually a scenario that we looked at. So the school signed up with TPN and they started submitting their parents onto the platform and loading their behavior. From this, we can see that in January 2021, they received a grace period for that month, meaning perhaps the school fees was due at the end of January. And then starting from February, we can see that he partially paid, March he partially paid, and then all of a sudden, from April going forward, he started paying in full and on time. And this is exactly where the SMSs comes into play, like Ashley mentioned earlier. It changes the behavior and it basically encourages good payment behavior in your parents' school fees when it comes to their monthly accounts. Going up to the top, we then have also your Transunion information. And this is the tab whereby you will be able to see, again, any basic consumer information that's been recorded onto their database. Should there be any defaults or judgments, you'll also be able to confirm what those listings are for. And again, as we continue to scroll down, it will then confirm to us how many accounts do they have that has been recorded on Transunion, and we can see what the current balance is for those accounts, the monthly installment, again being important in terms of affordability. And in this instance, we can also see that this parent has quite a few arrears for those accounts that he has. When we continue to go down, it then gives you the breakdown for what those different types of credit accounts are, again reflecting the payment behaviors. If we have a look here, we can see that the personal loans account that they've got is paid in full every month and on time. So you'll notice that the payment flags on Transunion look slightly different to what we profile on TPN. They use numbers. The numbers inside of the blocks will simply indicate the amount of months which the account is in arrears for or not in arrears for. So ideally you want to see that it's not in arrears, so all of your zeros. But here we can see that there's also a Cell C account whereby they immediately from the get-go, they fell behind with 1 month, paying short on the installments. It went into arrears for 2 months, into arrears for 3 months, and then ultimately we can see in the month of June, the account has been closed. In an instance whereby you can see there is a different key code given, like in this case being a letter, a C or an L, to view what the description is for that on the live system, you need to go and click on this View All Key Descriptions link, and that will then take you through to a wiki page whereby you can confirm the C stands for your account has been paid in full and is closed. Ashley, when it comes to seeing this SACRA information on the Transunion report, I think this is also important to take into consideration when it comes to exemptions. How can this information be used for exemption applications?
Absolutely, Chanel. So in respect of public schools, parents who can't afford to pay school fees at your fee charging schools, that would be schools in your quintiles 4 and 5, as you may know, they can approach the school and apply for a fee exemption. So public schools are reminded that in terms of Section 3 of the regulations relating to the exemptions of parents from the payment of school fees requires that the school principals inform the parents of exemptions and assist where needs be in applying for exemptions. So in respect of exemptions, you get full exemptions, your partial exemptions, and conditional exemptions. In respect of a partial exemption in which a parent would get a discount on school fees, the amount would depend on the income of the parents in relation to the school fees. So by performing the smart check, a school can verify that the parent is in fact earning an income and can confirm any other expenses that parent may have.
Exactly that. So if you can see that you might have received this application in terms of exemptions, but the parent has 15 different types of credit accounts which they are paying every single month, there must be a source of income for them being able to pay those accounts, which then obviously raises a lot of questions. Thank you, Ashley.
Cool.
Going back to the top of the report, within your Smart Check inquiry, you'll see that there's also a different tab here called Employment. So following on the discussion we just had when it comes to exemptions, another important bit of information that public schools specifically would like to confirm is whether or not that parent is actually employed. So again, employment is based on reciprocity of data. So for the school to have access to this information, the school also needs to submit that same type of information, the school's employment information. On the employment module, you'll then be able to see whether or not that parent is currently employed, or if they have been, let's say in this instance, we can see they were employed as a casual type worker, their position held was a data capturer, and this terminated doesn't refer to them being fired or dismissed from work, it means that the contract, because they were a casual worker, the contract that they have or that they had was terminated at that point. Whereby here we can see in this instance, this reason for leaving was as being dismissed. And to find out maybe what the details around that process was and why they were dismissed, you will also see that there's contact information for you to reach out to have that discussion. If, however, you can see on that exemption application that you have received and you've conducted your smart check, and you can see that that parent is currently being employed. Again, that raises a very high question as to why they have applied for exemption. And also on the employment, we can see that although it doesn't display the actual rand value of the salary, it does confirm whether or not they are receiving, for example, 100% basic salary, or perhaps it's a split between 50% basic and 50% commission, which again is important in terms of the application that you've received, affordability, exemptions, all of that. Right, going back to the top of our reports, here you have your a separate ID verification, which we've basically had a look at on the summary page, and we also have the biometrics. So if you have selected that option, like I mentioned earlier, once that parent has successfully conducted the selfie check of themselves, you will then have the ability to download the proof of identity report, which is quite interesting because it will not only confirm all of the information that has returned back from the Department of Home Affairs, but you can actually go and view the real lifetime photo versus the photo that has returned from the Department of Home Affairs. Also included within your smart check is your tab for your proof of address, which we've also looked at in the summary page. And you also have the option of confirming the deeds on file. So again, if they've supplied you with that address information, you may make use of the deeds tab to confirm that they do actually own that property. There's also a qualifications tab, which is something that you might be using a little bit more for your staff members that you want to run credit checks on, new staff members that you are going to employ. But as an additional option, we do provide the qualifications on the parent applications as well. This information we do receive from PERC, so if there's something there, you can go and view what those qualifications are for that parent. Right, Ashley, having a look at the smart check report and all of the valuable information that it holds, are schools allowed to decline parent applications based on the credit checks that they've conducted?
Shana, I think you raised a very, very important question, and I think just off the bat, both state and private schools cannot refuse admission, number one, on the basis of race and religion. If we're speaking in respect of school fees, in respect of public schools, we turn to Section 5(3)(a) of the South African Schools Act, and I'll read it for you. It says that no learner may be refused admission to a public school on the grounds that his or her parent is unable to pay or has not paid the school fees determined by the governing body under Section 39. In respect of independent schools, of course, the South African Schools Act does not prohibit schools, private schools from refusing admission due to non-payment of school fees. So it is a means of last resort, and we should not disrupt one's basic education. Remember that the children's interests are paramount in all instances, but of course the governing body will determine the admissions policy for that school. We can imagine that it will be a bit more there will be more requirements in respect of your independent schools, such as an admission exam and the likes. But again, it really depends on whether it is in fact a public school or an independent school.
Thank you, Ashley. Then also for schools that might not have received consent, but you have received all of these parent applications and you really would like to verify if that parent's information is correct. Under the Credit Checks tab, you will also be able to go and conduct the Know Your Client check, which we call, in short, your KYC. That verifies the identity of the parent. It verifies the address information that they've supplied you with, as well as the contact number. In respect of tracing information, so let's say you've got parents that's left the school, but they've still got outstanding school fees and you would like to do your follow-ups with that. You will then also have the ability to run trace inquiries, which will provide you with the last known contact numbers and addresses that those parents have supplied to out in the industry. It is important to note that to run your KYC and your trace inquiry, no consent is needed for that because it doesn't supply you with any credit behavior and payment behavior on those reports. If you'd like to know more on how these work or you need any assistance to carry one of those or to conduct one of those inquiries, please do reach out to our help desk department. Right, Ashley, I think now let's have a look at taking proactive measures when it comes to the collections portion for outstanding school fees.
Absolutely. So we have two main things that we're going to touch on today, our letters of demand and our adverse listing. Chanel, you will obviously take us through the system as we go along and we discuss it. So I think let's jump right in. We're going to have a look at the different types of letters of demands that schools use. And let's have a look at the guidelines that schools need to take into consideration with respect to our letters of demand. And it's imperative to note that there is a difference between independent and public schools with respect to letters of demand. So let's have a look at our independent schools. If we look at our independent schools, the basis of the letter of demand will come from the agreement with the parents. And so we only need to allow the parent 20 business days for payment after the letter of demand is sent before taking any further legal action. So your letter of demand will say that the parent is in breach, there is outstanding school fees, it will stipulate your amounts, and that affords the parents 20 business days in order to rectify and to pay that outstanding amount. It will obviously include the school's details should the parent wish to get in touch with the school. That will be your bursar, your finance department in that regard. And then imperative in respect of your letter of demand that it includes the relevant warning that if you fail to settle your debt in full, your consumer credit profile may be adversely affected. The reason we include this warning in letters of demand is that we need to notify parents that should further action be taken, such as your adverse listings, then of course we need to give them that warning that they are at risk of being adversely listed. In respect of our public schools, so here the difference between your independent schools, the first thing is to ensure that the parent was notified in writing of the right to apply for a full, your partial or conditional exemption of school fees. So in the TPN letter of demand, this is included, and that is the written notice that the parent has that right to apply for an exemption. Imperative to note is that you only need to allow 20 business days before adverse listing, but if you wish to take further legal action in a public school, you need to allow for 3 months from the date that the letter of demand has been sent before taking any further action. And so that's in terms of the South African Schools Act, and that would be in your cases of whether you've sent your letter of demand, so prior they've applied for your exemptions, they did not qualify or they failed to apply for an exemption, and the letter of demand went out. You waited 20 business days, you then adversely list your parents, and after that adverse listing you still wish to take action by taking judgment against the parents. Of course, you will have to there wait 3 months from the date that the letter of demand before taking any further legal action. So it's important to note that if you sent your letter of demand in which the parent was notified that they have the right to apply for an exemption, that you allow the exemption process to be finalized before taking any further collection process. So allow the exemption process to take place. In respects of any exemption process, this is usually about 30 days. That's now excluding any appeal-based processes. And then also in respects of your letter of demand, as with independent schools, we include the relevant warning that if you fail to settle the debt in full, your consumer credit profile may be adversely affected. Chanel, I don't know if you want to guide our schools and parents, everyone watching, how to go about finding TPN's letters of demand.
Yes, thank you for that in-depth explanation. Those guidelines are really important, especially if you want to follow through and push through with loading that adverse listing. It's important to make use of the correct letter of demand. So on the system, you need to go and click on the My Data tab at the top. And then, as I mentioned earlier, when you do load your parents' data on the platform, whether it be via an electronic export process, if you are using a billing system, or if you are loading your parents manually onto the system, you will then be able to access that information by clicking on the My Data tab. Once you've clicked on that tab, it will provide you with the active parent list that's available on your profile. And if this is information, again, like I mentioned earlier, that you do not see on your side, please do reach out to our data department, because they will be able to assist you on how to get your parents loaded onto your TPN profile. So you will click on My Data and then select the parent that you need to go and send that letter of demand to. Once you've made the selection, it will take you through to the school fee summary for that parent. And then on the left-hand side, you will see when you go down on that list, there's an option for you to click on Letters. Once you've clicked on Letters, at the bottom of that next screen, there will be a next link that you will click on. Click here to send a new letter. And that then brings us to the letters list that you have available. And this is like what Ashley has now explained to us, really determining what letter is the correct letter to use for your school in both public and private options. So here you can see for the public schools, we have the registered letter of demand available there, and we also have the letters of demand available for your private schools. Once you've established which letter is the correct one for you to send out, you will click on the link, which will then take you to a next screen whereby you have to confirm and validate the agreement that's in place between the school and the parent. The term is based on how many years have that child been in the school. So if the child has been in the school for that very first year, it's then regarded as a fixed term agreement because you expect the child to return back the following year. If the child is already in the school from the second year onwards, you will then go and select the month-to-month option. Your school board, if you click in delivery confirmation, you'll tick the little box there at the bottom to confirm you want them to receive that letter of demand. When you click on send letter, that is then immediately when the system SMSs and emails out the notification. Ashley, when it comes to sending out your letters of demand, for divorced parents or parents in general, is it important to provide both the parents a letter of demand for blacklisting purposes?
Absolutely. So in respect of the status of parents, whether separated, together, divorced, as the case may be, we go off the basis of the definition of parents in Section 1 of the South African Schools Act. And what's important to note is that parents are jointly and severally liable in respect of school fees. You may, in respect of divorced parents, have a divorce order in which a parent is specified to pay the school fees. What's important to note is that the school is not party to that divorce order. So the school can pursue from both parents. So it is advisable to send the letter of demand to both parents, and in the case where necessary, adversely list both parents. And I think that would bring us to the next aspect of that, is adverse listings.
Yes, so on the system we'll obviously go through that process, but I think let's touch on what the requirements are for when it comes to actually following through with loading the blacklisting for those parents.
Absolutely. So if we look at the guidelines in respect of adverse listings, again, we need to take into the consideration the requirements for independent schools. Hello there, sorry, I believe we disappeared for 2 seconds there. We're back. We were discussing the position in respect of whether to send a letter of demand to both parents or to one parent. Isn't that right, Chanel? And so I think just for clarity's sake, let's just run through that one more time. Chanel had asked whether we send, if in respect of separated or divorced parents, we send a letter of demand to one parent or to both parents. And remember that parents are jointly and severally liable in respect of school fees. And we advise to send the letter of demand to both parents. In respect of divorced parents, you may have a divorce order in which it's stated a parent may pay for school fees. It's a reminder that the divorce order is not binding on the school, but binding on the parents, and so schools can in fact pursue from both parents. And the same can be said in respect of adverse listing, which, Chanel, I think we can delve into adverse listings and the guidelines for adverse listings. Of course, we now need to consider the position for independent schools versus public schools. And of course, we need to consider both the requirements from the National Credit Act and the South African Schools Act. So in respect of independent schools, if we look at the guidelines, we have, in respect of independent schools, the consumer has to be in arrears for 3 consecutive billing cycles before. So parent has not paid for April, May, and June. They are in arrears for 3 consecutive billing cycles. Has the school sent a letter of demand in this time frame? That's also imperative. Has the letter of demand specified that they have 20 business days to pay the outstanding amount? So 20 business days must pass since the letter of demand, before an adverse listing can take place in respect of our independent schools. We remind ourselves that in respect of independent schools, the agreement governs the relationship between the parents and the school. And then in respect of your public schools, we have to consider the additional requirement provided for in terms of exemptions. So was the parent duly notified in writing of their right to apply for an exemption of school fees, right? And that, again, as I mentioned, is included in your TPN letter of demand. If they have failed to pay for you, if they've failed to apply for the exemption or have not stuck to the conditions of that exemption, we then go on to the further requirements and collection process. Has the parent been in arrears for 3 consecutive billing cycles? So the same position in respect of your independent schools as with your public schools in this regard. Parents did not pay for April, May, June. It's 3 consecutive billing cycles. And then has the school sent a letter of demand? That letter of demand, since the day that letter of demand was sent, we must afford the parent 20 business days to pay the outstanding amount before adversely listing that parent. A reminder, though, that if you wish to take further legal action in a public school, that one needs to wait 3 months before doing so. So, for example, if you wish to take judgments, that is the most imperative point in respect of our public and our independent schools. Chanel, will you guide our schools in how to go about an adverse listing?
Yes, yeah. So actually, once you've, sorry.
Can I interrupt with a question that's quite relevant to what Ashley's just finished?
Yes.
We've got a question from Lorene Abrahams. She's asked about whether it would be better to load both parents from the start, even though one parent has specifically signed responsibility to pay the school fees.
I would advise loading both parents on. I think that is the most important part, so that then you are then able to send a letter of demand to both parents and thereafter adversely list if necessary.
And you would adversely list both parents again?
That's correct, yes.
Provided both of them have received the letter of demand.
100%.
And it's also important that when you do load both of those parents, Lorraine, that to note when you capture the payment behavior, both of those parents will also then receive the SMS notifications. So that will spark a reaction in terms of making sure payment is being made.
So that's actually the best practice. You should load both parents from the beginning. And
absolutely.
Actually just go after both of them for outstanding fees.
100%. That would be the best way forward, and guarantees that the school has more option in seeing a return in school fees. I think we were going on the process. Was that it, Nikki?
Yes, sorry, you were going on to adverse listings.
Yes, that's it.
Right. So following the letter of demand that you've sent, you've counted your 20 business days. And when it comes to counting your business days, I do really just want to mention that it's important for you to make sure that the calendar you use does actually display public holidays, because I have seen calendars that doesn't display public holidays. So now you might think that you are counting business days, but it's actually not the case. So if you end up loading that blacklisting prematurely and a dispute is logged, we will have to remove that blacklisting if it hasn't been done correctly. So once you've sent your letter of demand, you've counted your 20 business days, and it's now the 21st business day, the time is right for you to load the blacklisting. Again, you'll sign in on TPN, you'll click on My Data, you will select the parent that you need to load the listing for. Again, on your left-hand side, you'll see there's an option for you to click on Blacklistings, and when you click on that, it will take you through to a next screen with a link. Click here to add a new blacklist record. Once you've clicked on that link, it will take you through to enter the default information. And this is then where it's also important, because here it will show you the parent or parents associated with that specific TPN record. So if you can see that both parents are associated, but you know that you've only sent the father, in this case Joe, a letter of demand, and you did not send a letter to the mother as well, you have to untick her from that option you then may not blacklist her because you didn't give her your formal notification of what your intentions are. So it is important to note, if there's 2 parents associated with one record, please do send each of them a letter of demand in their individual capacity. Then enter the default information. The default date is extremely important because your default listings or blacklistings may only reflect against a consumer's credit profile for 12 months. So in an instance whereby you are following up on collections, whereby you want to start loading listings for collections from 2020, 2021, it's important to not backdate the default date, but rather use that current day's date that you are literally loading the blacklisting to ensure that it's profiled against that parent's record for the next 12 months going forward. The rating, when you click on this drop down, it will provide you with a list whereby you can choose to load the blacklisting onto our bureau only, but also choose to load it onto both TPN as well as Transunion, which is what we normally recommend because it opens up that platform for you to get the collections in much quicker. So what happens if you select, for example, final notice or hand it over? If you have handed over, you will have the ability to then load the blacklisting on a second bureau as well. So now if that parent goes and applies to get their cell phone contract upgraded, or they want to apply for vehicle finance, the blacklisting information is then going to reflect on that consumer's credit record when the credit provider runs that credit check. The amount due, again, everything that's outstanding, and then the reason is going to be a short description for what that account is for. So you can mention outstanding school fees or outstanding school fees 2022. You can include the year there as well. Below that, you will then see associated payments. And this is important for your current parents to ensure that the account is in arrears for the 3 consecutive billing cycle period, which Ashley mentioned earlier. So that can be either made up of 3 months worth of partial payments, 3 months worth of did not pays, or a combination of the 2, which we can see in this instance, reflecting as partially paid, did not pay, did not pay. Then insert compliance declaration. You'll tick the box to confirm you have followed all of the provisions set out in the National Credit Act. The parent didn't adhere to any of those measures. When you then click on Save Listing, that is then when they will immediately receive the SMS and email notification to inform them that they have been blacklisted and that they need to contact the school immediately. Actually, when it comes to loading blacklistings, how far along may you load the blacklistings for? Is there a specific retention period?
Absolutely. So in respect of adverse listings, they last for a period of 1 year from the date of listing, obviously depending on the default date that you have loaded. So it's important to note that they last 1 year. And what's important to note that if you, for whatever reason, are doubting that you've met all the requirements, rather contact TPN at legal@tpn.co.za. Give us a call 0861 876 000 so that we can confirm you have in fact met the requirements for your adverse listing, because it's important to note you only get one opportunity to do it, as you can't relist someone for the same debt. And I think that then brings us to the end of our formal session. Hey,
yes,
Chanel?
I think so, Ashley. Remember to look out for the feedback forms, which I'm sure they've posted in our chat section. Please do complete those forms and submit it back to us. Nikki, are there any questions for us?
We've only got one question really, which is one of the schools, I think it's Olivia Young, is asking, can a letter of demand be sent via email? People are mentioning that they're having problems with registered mail returning.
Okay, so it is dependent. What's important to note is that registered post is always preferred. TPN does give that option. And then obviously you can send it via email as well via TPN system, and they will also receive an SMS notification.
Yeah, so when it goes out from the system, from our TPN system, if there is an email address that's been loaded onto the platform for that parent, then we send it out via post, SMS, and email.
Just
That's
to
how it's
make
done
sure
from
you cover
our
all the
platform.
bases
That's
and
it.
get that
Yes.
payment in. I mean, that is
That's
the end
always
goal.
first prize, that if it is ever disputed, you can produce that registered post slip. You can contact TPN. That if it is disputed, you can contact us. We'll send a copy of the registered post slip, confirming that in fact it was sent via registered post. But of course, we also send it via email, and they will receive an SMS notification in that regard.
Perfect. That actually is all the questions I have. I can see the feedback link has been posted. Please respond. There is a way to opt in for marketing, so we can get hold of you about future webinars. And that's all the questions we've got here.
Great.
Great.
If
Thank
you-
you everyone for joining us
Yeah.
today. We hope that you've enjoyed it. Thank you, Ashley, for all of your legal insights.
Yeah, thank you, Chanel. If you have any questions or you may think of anything throughout the day, you again welcome to contact helpdesk@tpn.co.za. If it's a legal question, legal@tpn.co.za, or contact us 0861 876 000. We'll be happy to help. Thanks very much.
Have a good day.